identified that all these factors that determine or affect or cause changes in gender norms, they can be driven specifically by good communication. So sensitization campaigns and so on by government or other non-profit institutions. So that in the previous lesson, when we were looking at the factors that affect or drivers that cause changes to gender norms, it concluded module 3. So we had started on module 4 from there on. So module 4 has got 5 specific topics. The first one is life expectancy. And number 2, also the mic, there's a mic there.
Didn't you get pause? You don't have this.
No, it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so module 3 was looking at 5 specific topics. The first one, as I said, is life expectancy. Number 2 is population ratio. So population ratio, looking at the ratio between males and females. And topic number 3 is women issues and development. Topic number 4 is gender as development issue. And the last one is feminist contribution to the gender or the development theories. So we're looking at life expectancy. So we know that when you're looking at the element of life expectancy, we're just determining the number of years that, on average, people in a specific country are expected to live. So, for example, previously, before there was a revolution of medicine, good nutrition, better living standards, and sanitation, the life expectancy in a lot of underdeveloped countries was low, somewhere around maybe 32 to 35 years. But with coming in with of advanced medicine, non-profit institutions that offer healthcare and better living standards, it has increased the life expectancy significantly. That wasn't present previously. So the life expectancy will refer to the average number of years that people are expected to live in a given country. So the expected to live there is a key term in life expectancy. However, life expectancy and longevity rate, we can call them relatively the same, but then the difference lies in the measurement issues. Life expectancy is properly calculated, while longevity just looks at, for example, a population pyramid of a specific country where they're able to identify that there are people who are living above, let's say, the age of 65. So that determines longevity of a particular or a given country. So life expectancy, on the other hand, is calculated in a very precise manner where social scientists use the life tables again of the population pyramid to make a difference between the births that are available or are present in a given country against the given deaths. And through that assimilation, they are able to determine the life expectancy or the life expectancy of that given country. So, as a particular technique, longevity is not associated with any particular statistical technique, as I say. So, both life expectancy and longevity are distinct from lifespan. So, when you are looking at longevity, which just determines at a given time how many years a person is living above the age of 65, where life expectancy is looking at the number of years people on average are expected to live. Lifespan looks at specifically the number of years that a person is most likely to live given all good conditions. So in life expectancy is giving you data that is available there. Lifespan, it's giving you an assumption of saying if all other things were not, if all other conditions that facilitate human life were present, what is the expected lifespan of a specific country? So So, for example, if we had better living standards in Malawi, we had very good health care, the country wasn't poor and all those things. The expected lifespan for the country maybe will reach up to, let's say, 90 years old, because all favorable conditions are present to increase the life expectancy. So the key aspect of lifespan is that all favorable conditions are available to increase the life expectancy of a given population. So measuring of life expectancy. So life expectancy, as I say, is a summary measure of mortality in a specific country. So it's just measuring the mortality and the birth rate. So mathematically, it's giving you a representation of the death rate minus the birth rate, giving you a representation of how many people are, what is the average years that a population in a given country is expected to live minus that death rate. So life expectancy measures life expectancy at birth. So there are two life expectancy measures. Life expectancy at birth, so that is a calculation that determines putting, for example, if a person is born, how many years on average is a person who is born is going to spend in that given country. And the second measure of life expectancy is life expectancy after the age of 65. So the first life expectancy is measuring birth to 65 years old. When they reach 65 years old, it means they have to measure a different life expectancy again, because the assumption is to say that at 65, how many more years can a person live after 65? So depending on the conditions that are favorable in that country, the life expectancy above the age of 65 may go up to 70, 80, depending on different factors in that given country. So the life tables give accurate data of death by age as well as sex of the population. And this data in many countries, however, is challenging to acquire, especially in underdeveloped countries. Like, for example, Malawi, where so for the country that is underdeveloped specifically, for them to pump in resources to the, about Amena Maenga community, asking about data, they are called enumerators. So if, for example, the government is providing allowances for those people, sometimes the government may not be able to provide allowances for people to go around to collect such data, and therefore, because in the international community they understand this problem, they're able to just, we can say, make an average according to the data that is presented in the previous year. And sometimes international agencies, when they really specifically want to know about life expectancy or those measures in other countries, they'll do what is known as a sample survey, right? So they'll just collect a sample of the entire population and determine some of these factors where they'll be able to measure the life expectancy in the long run, just as a method of just coming up with an average according to the entire population. So there are theoretical frameworks for gender differences after that determine life expectancy. So the theoretical framework in gender differences is that the assumption has shown, or the assumption previously and then was backed by science, is that women tend to live longer than men. And there are various factors that will determine why women will live longer than men in the long run. So the first is the biological difference. So there's a clear sex differentiation in health status. So men have higher rates of death, which is mortality, and more serious as well as chronic illnesses than men. Than women. So when you're looking at men having higher deaths, why do you think, like for example, in Malawi, men have their higher deaths of men than women?
Like high days,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
between men and women.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think men would have a higher death rate than women?
I think when it comes to taking care of the family,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, sometimes when you're not financially stable, you have some stress that how are you going to feed your family? how you're able to do all of your plans.
Mm.
So that's going to contribute to
Yeah,
high
other
issue.
health issues, maybe,
Yeah.
right? So, for example, like as you're viewing that men will have higher death rates because generally in most settings, men are the ones that take care of the household. So, as you're putting it, stress can lead to other health problems and so on. And the other factor that promotes these issues is because normally when a man is sick, they just say, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So because of that, you find that if, for example, a person has an illness, they probably would have gotten there, but because they spend a lot of time thinking about whether or not they should go to the hospital, they end up just dying. So you are looking at the seriousness of illnesses. And the other factor is that generally men work in situations or in areas in the industry that are more dangerous than women. Eh? So you find, for example, industry or production line, maybe mechanical handling of machine and usually the men who are doing it than women. So you hear a lot of industry kids, they are usually men because they are the ones handling those machines. So, however, a certain study disagrees with the fact that men have got higher death rates. And it showed that women generally suffer from a greater level of sickness than men. So, when you're looking at this contested level studies, they are based off of two different data sets. Men are seen as having a higher rate of death because it has been shown statistically. For example, suicide in Manale, one is only there are more men who are committing suicide than women. So because that data is showing that, so we are able to determine that there are higher rates of death. And when you're looking at chronic illnesses, through the health management system, they are able to see that many of the chronic and serious health illnesses remain at the hospital. So this, the opposing information saying that women suffer from greater levels of sickness is coming from the ratio of hospital attendance, right? So when you're looking at data that shows hospital attendance, it shows that women are the ones that go to hospital more. So it will maybe suggest that women have a greater level of illness. But in reality, it's because women have got better access to healthcare because of the focus. So when you're looking at a health center, for example, family planning, most of the time those services are accessed by women, right? So it's going to increase the amount of women that go to the hospital because generally men don't access family planning. And when you're looking at other health services as well, mainly the men go less to the hospital, and that contributes to the higher level of the men having chronic illnesses. So the degree of presence and absence of health services alone, however, do not account for the gender differences in health. So while timely and appropriate services can reduce the consequences of illness and injury, they cannot reduce the incidence of this in the first place. So this statement suggests that when a person is sick, that sickness, whether or not they have access to healthcare, it whether or not they have access to healthcare, it's not going to reduce the incidence of that illness coming in. But rather, the access to healthcare ensures that the person gets appropriate and well as timely services in order for them to conquer that illness. So the differences in incidences of illness between genders fall within three specific categories. The first is the biological explanation. So data suggests that men and women in terms of chromosomes, men have got the Y chromosome and women have got the XX chromosome. So the extra chromosome of women gives them an added advantage in terms of uterine issues as well as early infant illnesses. So occasionally reference may be made to the hormonal differences between men and women as a contributor. So it suggests that because women have got a greater level or a greater combination of hormones in their system, um, it shows that they will live longer than women. However, those years in terms of differences between men and women are not very significant. Maybe we will just be 5 years. So that 5 years may or may not be contributed by the biological explanations. The second category of explanation between life expectancy between men and women is the behavior as well as cultural explanation. So on behavior part, it's obvious. the way that men behave, they are more risky, right? Because of maybe cultural expectation. For example, in the previous lesson, when I was looking at obedience and the conformity, I specifically identified that because of cultural expectations, um, maybe a man is expected to they're supposed to be more risky or they'll engage themselves in activities that will get them maybe to be on the bad side of the law, for example, stealing and vandalizing and all that, because that is expected in a specific culture. So, because of this emphasis on behavior and culture, men's health has given an explanation because of cultural analysis. So, stressing the factors of masculinity, what is expected as masculinity in a particular community is what determines men to have more risk-taking behavior, because that signifies what masculinity is. And this gives what is known as the poor health outreach. So when you are looking at the poor health outreach, for example, people will say that right? You're obviously sick, right? Why don't you just go to home? Because it is expected in society that maybe a man doesn't go to the hospital, doesn't show weakness, right? How are you going to deal? Because the cultural expectation is it shows that men have to be more strength, or they have to show level of strength than women. So if they're just showing weakness, it means it will not be a positive attribute to a man's life. So that would include behavior such as multiple sexual partners, attitudes about illness, attitudes about taking medication, and so on. And the last category is material and structural explanation. So when you're looking at material and structural explanation, these are social factors. So these social factors include employment, income, education opportunities, provision of health services, and so on. So this perspective is commonly used as a discussion for women's health. And it suggests that structural factors are the main causes of women's health problems. So a very good structural factor would be access to healthcare of women in countries that are primarily Islamic. So in countries such as that, women do not cannot have access to healthcare without the men having being a counterpart in the access. So that reduces the amount of healthcare for women, particularly in such countries. And it leads to the conclusion that attempt to improve women's health must focus on changes in the social system, such as the government policies. So the government policies, for example, access to education. So you know that a person who is educated has got better understanding to their expectations, for example, the patient in following guidelines of medication, following the instructions of the medical practitioner, and so on, as opposed to an uneducated person. Um, have you ever had an experience at the hospital? At the public hospital? You've never gone to a public hospital. You've gone to private hospital. Okay, so my example would be that, for example, particularly in a public hospital where one bed, they are very sick. So a person who is generally coming from a poor background and they don't have a level of education, the way that they can explain their symptoms. For example, they go to the doctor. Okay, so what can the doctor make out of a statement like that? Jamina nimegundua nilitaka hii kuvela zi. So alikuwa mimi au don't have something. Afuna nini mtishani? What exactly are they? So a person who has got a higher level, or not just a higher, at least to school and down, Sunday 5, Sunday 8, they are able to express it, okay, Mungu matter today, or I'm having a headache, I feel deep, or a person who has a higher level of education will go to the school, maybe a private hospital, and express, okay, ndakanduka maybe for 2 months, I got treatment, and so they are able to explain those things. Maybe they've had that image for a long time. But maybe a person who has not had enough education exposure, they can have multiple illnesses, but they'll just express one because they have a hard time expressing in a logical manner, and that affects the level of outcome in terms of health economics as well. So according to the data that represents biological, explanation, behavioral, and social, it has been seen that generally the information that shows us that men have got poor health than women, that information is accurate for countries in low socioeconomic statuses, not in countries that are rich. Because as you put it, in countries, for example, Malawi, a lot more men are going to have poor health and probably going to have higher death rates. It's because they are stressed out about how am I going to feed my children and all that. Because when you're looking at the job factor in Malawi, maybe the average income for a person who is not educated would be maybe 80,000. So when you're looking at money like 80,000, you're looking at money for the household. It will be something that's difficult. But in countries that are more well to do, the hourly rate of payment, even for a person who is not educated, maybe will be higher, right? And the person will be able to say, and they're able to say they're going to have significantly more income than in low socioeconomic status. So the assumption and the data that is present suggests that men who suffer from poor health are those from low socioeconomic status, and they have the highest rate of health problems. And it shows that 55% are more likely to die from lung cancer, 102% are more likely to die from vascular diseases. So it will be this information shows that there's a high skewedness of data suggesting that men have got highly, but specifically in low socioeconomic statuses, have got a higher chances of dying from multiple illnesses as opposed to men in higher socioeconomic statuses. So when you're looking at all these factors that determine, or biological explanations that determine life expectancy, and factors such as socioeconomic status, it brings out compounding factors in poor countries. So when you're looking at those compounding factors, we looked at biologically, we are saying that it contributes less to life expectancy, but particularly the cultural or behavior as well as material explanations. And because of these two things, poverty becomes an added disadvantage. So the degree of which people sense, the degree in which people belong to a society determines their level of social as well as economic disadvantage. So one specific mechanism has looked at the differentiation between men and women in low socioeconomic statuses. So while women have no less need than men for financial benefits of employment, it suggests that men require a lot more benefits for employment because that's how they define themselves. So a man will not be defined as a man if he is unable to provide for his family. So he needs to have enough benefits in the employment. So if he is unable to get these benefits from the employment, it affects self-esteem, it affects his security in terms of the family setting. As opposed to women where they have social expectations and rather they have social support in their household. So it doesn't matter, for example, if a woman is not working, but having children, they will have support traditionally from the whole community because the value in the society is through parenting and childbearing as opposed to men. And particularly this is the reason why there are higher suicide rates for men as opposed to women. Why do you think there are higher suicide rates outside of job security and so on? Why do you think there are higher suicide rates between males as opposed to women? Like recently, there was something that was circulating on social media. Nyamata winoaji, anazima njia, take what die. You saw that, right? Yeah.
Okay, I think it's because men are not open with women.
Men are not okay.
Yeah.
No, like women, so we're saying socially women are able to support themselves. They're able to support each other. And then you do women will talk about it, they have friends and so on. But then a person can, they'll just maybe go out drinking with their friends. Eh?
Yes.
Momo da kauza da kula kuni ne bura na mutanizi. Eh? Or even sometimes they would have those friends, they'll be drinking and they will express their problems, but men have a hard time supporting each other. What sort of support is that? Eh? So there are two ways. It's men generally don't open up as much as women, and that's the first thing. And the second thing is men generally don't support each other the way that women support each other. Actually, men are more likely to support women than they are to support their fellow men. Yeah. So when you're looking at this, it causes issues of self-esteem and so on. For example, I used to hear things such as, what's the number of playing you, somewhere. So when you're hearing something like that,
mimi napambana support kuti muntu balomuna pabanja ali wakazira kuwafusina mkazi amatoka na support yeye kutanguzira ngokuna naye instead of telling him kunena kuti why you are doing is not right.
It's not right. For example, muntu ngamali doesn't so when you're looking at things like that,
they're supposed to.
Yes. So the men generally will not support good positive outcomes in the family. There are very few men who support the father, but I mean, for example, so all of these things will contribute as compounding factors, specifically for poor countries that give them a disadvantage. And obviously, in that part, it would need to, if it's not suicide, then it would be a shorter life expectancy for me, right? So trends in life expectancy show that on average, the world has got the life expectancy for females is 69 on average, 69 years old, right? The chances of females living up to 69 years old, and for men, it is 65 years. However, we are looking at the projection between developed and underdeveloped countries. So it shows that in developed countries, males live, the life expectancy is 72 and the females is 79. While in less developed countries, the life expectancy for males is 63 and for females is 66. So when you're looking at this data, maybe it's not really showing that there is a very big gap in terms of the life expectancy. But that one is very apparent in less developed countries because when you're looking at poverty, right? Poverty is primarily one of the factors that are going to cause the life expectancy to be less. Like access to health care, we say they don't have a very good job, they are not able to have very good nutrition. So if they have an illness, when you're looking at all this, and another factor of HIV and AIDS, which contributes to a lot of deaths in underdeveloped countries. So the differences between life expectancy is present between developed and undeveloped countries. So in developed countries, it shows that life expectancy has been smaller. Approximately 8 more years have been added. The major factor accounting for this increase in life expectancy is improvement in nutrition, hygiene practices, knowledge about public health, and advancement in measures to deter illnesses. So these advances were particularly important and they have contributed to reducing the infant mortality. So the risk of death is high among infants and also highest among women who are giving birth. So when you're looking at these areas of death as well as major causes of death such as infectious diseases, as opposed to developing nations. So we are seeing that the trend in life expectancy shows that in developed countries, a lot has changed between, let's say, around the 1950s to right now in 2024. The life expectancy in developed countries has significantly increased. And a lot of developed countries, but I'm not going to mix I don't know, chemicals, right? I don't know if it's chemicals, it's nutrition, they'll give IV infusion, so a drip, right? So it will facilitate, we are calling it cellular regeneration. So that will be carry more useful, they should have energy and all that. So it has increased the life expectancy in a lot of developed countries because of advancement in technology and many other factors. But that is not the same, the case is not the same for developing countries. There is very little improvement in terms of life expectancy. And the very important factor in terms of life expectancy in developing countries and developed countries is HIV and AIDS. there, they advocate for a person to, for example, a man, yeah? So for example, a cultural value such as that, it's affecting the efforts to sustain, to mitigate the effect of HIV and AIDS in a lot of countries, in a lot of developed countries. So for example, right now, the WHO as well as the General Organization Ministry of Health, they have brought in more information to promote use of condoms, safer sex, reducing sexual partners and so on, because they are seeing this information is very illegal in terms of reducing HIV and AIDS. People, and I'm talking like, something. I remember the time that COVID was intense in 2020, right? People had forgotten about HIV. So it affects, so when you're looking at these contraction of illnesses, it affects life expectancy, not only of the parents, but also of the children in the long run. Any questions?
But this course, I find it difficult.
Okay, why is it difficult?
Like, when it comes to living in the house, it's like, I don't know, differences. Mwenyewe makadari mbaya sino vetting what is happening.
Yeah, so this is the reason why I wanted everyone to be here, so we can discuss many of you, actually all of you didn't really do well in the exam.
Yeah.
So I wanted to see, Budi, what are your challenges in terms of understanding the concept of the course. So as you are saying, Budi, what challenges are you experiencing?
Okay. You know, the theory that when it can be, but to understand the whole thing and give it in my head, it is difficult.
So for this course only, for other courses as well?
Hi, all the courses are what the those are one like, okay, if we are used to the notes or what they are written on the board. So all the courses we take the notes from the board. Almost always.
How many languages are not saying? Check with the group. Check it.
Before you begin to food out, someone will like this is report, most of the world. Then to the word is not when the neighbors with the food.
No, I said it not of the group. I sent every note of the group and I even asked, so maybe the problem has been okay, so it has been better if all of you were here so that we can discuss the issues from, let's say, group discussions on areas that you have problems. If you look at the notes, it's going to show you maybe what are the areas that you have challenges. So I had planned for today that way we look at these key elements of why are you having challenges. Because if you are saying that you are having challenges with the whole course, all of the courses, right? So it means that you should have been able to identify the delivering human understanding of the concept. So in terms of the English that is used, the phrasing, what?
I think it's that when I was in Nanga Muje is business Makarana. They will understand the English.
So that's
but
where
not the English.
Not the English.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes it can be not specifically when I'm looking at English, it's not really that
Yeah.
the English, what I mean is the type of words that, for example, lecturers will use, and the phrasing. Sometimes the person is phrasing that are too deep for a person to understand, right? And that will affect your level of understanding. So, so if you are having challenges in understanding those key concepts, it means you generally need to difference it in class a lot more times, because most of the times we have a job, right? So that will affect, because in class I'll give further and better explanations than noting. If you're in class, you'll be able, okay, so if you don't make it in class, it will be hard for you to understand many of those concepts by yourself. You'll be just reading the notes. So those are the key elements that you need to focus on. Okay, so in proceeding, the determinants of differential inheritance So I've explained that in a lot of African countries, the major issue with life expectancy is HIV and AIDS. And it suggests that sub-Saharan Africa has been hit hard by HIV and AIDS. And approximately 70% of the world population has got HIV and AIDS and contributes to the lowest level of life expectancy. So AIDS cannot solely account for low life expectancy in Africa, but also social as well as political issues, including poverty and high risk of death. So when you are looking at, we are saying that HIV and AIDS is the primary reason why there is low life expectancy in Africa. But then, the HIV and AIDS has also been affected by social reasons. For example, socially, we are looking at early marriages, right? That would cause more and more HIV prevalences. Political upheavals. So when you're looking at political structures, it's affecting life expectancy because there are some countries that are infiltrated by a lot of conflicts. And furthermore, when you're looking at poverty. So a person, let's say, has tested HIV positive and they have started treatment. They don't have, let's say, enough income and they can't afford good nutrition. So because of this lack of good nutrition, it's going to affect life expectancy in the long run and increasing the risk of death as well. And with this impact, it has shown that the effect of HIV and AIDS is keeping life expectancy lower than the age of 50, even up until 2050. Whereas if the pandemic wasn't there, the chances of life expectancy in Africa would have reached 65 to 70 years old. Right now, we hear a lot of things about you're looking at all these things, and the reality that is happening right now is that the people that are dying are the younger ones, right? As opposed to the people who are older. You don't think they have moved out of the years which they were maybe extremely sexually active and all that. So the younger people are dying more and maybe not even reaching the age of 50. And life expectancy in Africa also takes into account gender equality and malaria as well as other illnesses. So today, 40 million people live with HIV and AIDS, and over 95% of them are in developing countries. And because of this, AIDS has orphaned a lot of children, giving in problems with poverty, having exposure to other illnesses, including malaria, and also having been affected with poverty. So already more vulnerable people are affected because of poverty, and specifically girls in terms of vulnerability to dropping out of school and being retained in the home to take care of security. So when you are looking at this gender equality, in the gender equality problem, with often children being orphaned. So, like for example, both parents have died, Asiana and Adolf four. Anna Adama Inora anyway in the relatives, they have to take care of them. So, once Kumoronia Kusama is noticed one day, generally the care will be different. And when the relatives that are also taking care of you are equal, as equally poor as the house of them you were coming in from, they'll look at you maybe as a credit. If you don't get school fees, you need to be eh? Muna singa one so kuzubi school. Muna sanga concentration now and all of that. So that increases the dropout rate of girls, and also they have to take care, because of that, they have to take care of household issues, and that increases the prevalence of HIV and AIDS, child marriages, and exposure to other illnesses. And furthermore, it would mean that as we have been talking about the lesson, we saw that one of the school, they are exposed to having early marriages. Or if maybe they don't get married, what are the chances of them being exposed economically in Africa? For example, let's say I'm a business of this Masamba. Masamba, how much money, for example, is the person, particularly in the village, going to make out of a business such as that? As opposed to say, if they got exposed to maybe training, that can earn them maybe more money and so on. So this further increases gender inequality, as well as exposing women to have to be more poor and also vulnerable in the social setting. it will bring them aspects of gender-based violence, being exploited, and so on. And many women, because of not having a good economic background, they go into sex work and so on. So this affects illnesses such as HIV as well. Before I proceed, you have. So the link between gender equality and reducing child mortality. So it has been seen that in households where women have been given economic advantages, the chances of reducing child mortality are significant. The reason is my normally Akonoda was in they have any business and so on. Their way of taking care of the household is better. Because normally, for example, between men and women, if a man has got 20,000 and a woman has 20,000, a man with 20,000 is just thinking about himself, while a woman is going to think about the entire household. So this shows that in societies where there is a lot of gender equality, there is increased child mortality because women generally don't have control of the economics in the household, and it's going to affect quality of care of the children, which also affects a child nutrition. Because if the woman doesn't have money, she generally won't have the ability to take care nutrition-wise and also the quality of care for the children. So greater control of income by women also tend to lower, life expectancy, even when the household's total income is taken into account. So generally, increasing the household income are associated with a reduced child mortality, specifically when the mother has got hands-on income as opposed to the father. And child mortality rates are also linked to gender-related norms as well as customs. So in countries where parents regard health and survival of sons are more critical to their well-being than the survival of daughters, it's going to cause the treatment of nutrition and care to reduce the chances of survival of girls. So when you are looking at gender equality as well as reducing child mortality, we are going to look at this as we go along when we see the male-female ratio across the world. So there are some countries where Amabanga prefer having sons, right? So the family is generally not going to care for that child because they would prefer that the male children have to be alive as opposed to the girls. And it's going to affect child mortality. And as we go along, we'll see that that is the reason why, even although people are putting others than one me, but in reality, on a global scale, there are more men as opposed to women. Yes. So we have looked at the factors that affect longevity or life expectancy between men and women. We have looked at the link of life expectancy in regards to HIV and AIDS and how it impacts African countries, the link between gender equality and HIV and AIDS as well as other illnesses, as well as the link between gender equality and reducing child mortality. So that just looks at how women are generally drivers to promoting increased life expectancy in an overall country when they have access to income. And how, for example, HIV and AIDS, in terms of the equality, if women have got access to healthcare, they've got access to education and all those social resources, then the impact of HIV will be reduced because generally it's because women engage themselves in activities that we can call them less favorable and cause them to have to contract the HIV virus. So now we're going to look at the key drivers of population growth and gender equality. The key drivers of population growth and gender equality. So that will conclude unit 1 of module 4. So the key drivers of population growth is gender equality, gender inequality. So we are looking at life expectancy. We have seen that normally men are going to live less than women, but in a lot of underdeveloped countries, women are experiencing challenges in terms of life expectancy, particularly because of HIV and AIDS and poverty. And we are now trying to identify how gender inequality is the cause of population growth. So, because in a lot of African countries and underdeveloped countries, there is a denial of basic rights in the population, women especially don't have access to education, and therefore it reduces their ability to earn an income and their ability to choose of how many children they are going to have. So girls have agency over, girls who don't have agency over reproductive health rights have a life that limits their choices in terms of having the number of children. So, for example, in settings where girls don't have access to education and so on, you know, in a lot of hospitals, big and hospitals, they are trying to explain, it's affecting your household and all those things. And also, for example, in some settings where so okay, so a person gets pregnant, they have a child, they are not married with that person. Next year they start dating another person, having an so they are like, so when you're looking at all that, it's because of lack of education exposure, where they are able to see my cultural values, they are affecting you in terms of your livelihood. So it shows that the driver of population growth is because of gender inequality. The inequality is coming in because women have been denied basic rights in terms of education, freedom outside the home, and also in terms of income and choosing how many children you have. And particularly when you're I was looking at the cultural perspective, but then now when you're looking at the freedom outside the home and also the right to their bodies, because we are not educated, and also maybe you don't have financial leverage or so it means that your role in the household is just having children. So you don't really have a say. And I have had experience in very remote areas where it was said that women that are on birth control, they don't perform well in the culturally, that's what they believe it. And and because of this, we identified that these were issues in terms of the community problems. So we were giving them this control at the hospital. Nobody was mwezi wako tukuenia suno lese mwe mzaba isi kandi just zikawa kuli abangwaja samara asamazio and they came that birth control known as loop, so it's inserted into the uterus, right? So that one became even a very good, a successful birth control because it's for 5 years. So if a woman just go to the hospital, so birth control, the man doesn't know, and that offered an allowance for them to have access to family planning without the husband knowing. So when you're looking at these rights in terms of their bodies, a woman who feels like she doesn't really, she really can't make a decision in terms of children, is constantly going to have children. You find that maybe a person, how like 20. So you find that 20 years old and they are not. But now figures out in the 5 say that a person maybe is 36, she's a grandma. Because I know the man is 16. Now if you figure so what is what 16 figures that 32 so when you're looking at that cycle, so for example in the household, it's increasing the gender inequality and further increasing the population. You're finding the woman that are 13 and she already has a kid. Age 16, woman now figures that 19 and woman now that each. So because of lack of access to education and so on. So one of school is not going to focus on, let's say I should get married at 13 years old, at 16 years old, because you are more occupied. And also, in countries where they have access to all these resources, women and girls see the benefits of having an education. I was only consider when I need to this is a kind, this is and all those, they are looking at the benefits of independence and so on. And furthermore, gender inequalities forces women to have more children. So you are looking at in countries in sub-Saharan Africa, women, because women are denied opportunities education and jobs. Gender, their jobs, because of their gender, fertility rate tends to be higher. So the fertility rate in countries that are underdeveloped is even high. Of course, we assume now the fertility rate comes together with having access to maybe nutrition and good health. But the reality is there's higher fertility rates in countries that are underdeveloped, and also where women are not educated, because they generally don't have rights to education, they don't have rights and other opportunities that sort of distract them into not having more and more children. So that concludes Unit 1 of Module 4. So it is important to note that the described trends in rising as well as decreasing male excess mortality also coincides with a considerable change in gender roles in the society. And more specific gender view can help in understanding how social status levels and lifestyle influence mortality between men and women. So primarily there is the social status as well as my lifestyle is what affects the mortality between men and women. So that concludes Unit 1.
How many units?
I said 5. There are 5 units, so I said 5 topics, right? And then we conclude Module 4. So it means we need to just we have, you know that you have 5 weeks until the end of semester. Okay. So it means you have to know about that. Okay, so we can just go to Unit 2. I'm just going to start Unit 2 and then we'll discuss the issues in the exam. Okay? Okay, so Unit 2 is the gender ratio. So gender ratio is the measure of the number of males within a given group of a population. So the gender ratio looks at the amount of men and the amount of women in a given population. So in comparison to women. So in the late 2022, sex ratio focused primarily upon males and females. But the metric has expanded more accurately and representing non-binary genders. So you know that Manova, we are living in an age where normally transgender, non-binary, my gender will come in, right? But previously, so this information of focusing on non-binary genders is more apparent in the US than other countries. But in the rest of the countries, they're just looking at the ratio between men and women. And as of 2020, it showed that there are 300 men for every 200 women, representing a 1.5 ratio. So although one might expect that the sex ratio to fall within the 1-to-1, which is half and half, the split between males and females is not necessarily the case, and it is different depending on specific countries. And because of this, it's going to influence factors such as life expectancy and also access to various societal resources. So there are factors that influence the gender ratio. So we are saying that the amount of men for every woman that are in the population, and there are factors that are going to influence this gender ratio. The first factor is countries that are drawn into war and conflict. So in countries that are drawn into war and conflict, the men go into war, right? And the men die more. So if they die more, it means the ratio of women is going to be higher than the rate. The amount of women is going to be higher than the amount of men, causing an increase in the gender ratio. And the second is disease. So there are more the specific gender and gender-oriented professions such as construction work took a breakout during COVID-19. So because of this, you find that specific illnesses are going to favor having a higher rate of men in a population because of that specific illness is favoring women. And in some societies, males are considered to be preferable. So I was giving you an example that there are some countries where, so whenever normally when a person is pregnant, they go to the hospital and they'll scan it. And then you ask that, and then if the household has got already maybe 2 children and they want a man, So in countries where they value having a male child, they are going to have voluntary abortions for a female pregnancy, and that increases the amount of male children. And more importantly, a country's level of demographics. So a surplus or a lack of employment could encourage migrant workers. For example, my they are choosing that Dubai, so it's reducing the amount of, for example, female or male, particularly male, in terms of traveling to other countries. And data shows that, for example, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, is number one in terms of having the highest ratio of males to females. So it shows that there are 266 males for every 100 females. And this is because Qatar migrants from various countries. And also, there's also a preference of having male children in those countries. And number two in the countries that have got the highest male ratio is the United Arab Emirates. And again, with the UAE, it is because of high level of dependence of expatriate workers, and predominantly they are males that come and work in the industry. And the case is the same for Bahrain as well as Oman. And specifically Oman, the male to female ratio is higher in males because of the preference of having male children as well as the influx of male migrants. And furthermore, the data shows that geographically, on a global level, the percentage of men is 50% and 49% for women. So it's showing generally a ratio of maybe closer to 1-to-1. But the reality is that there are more males than females, even on a global scale. But the changes in the population pattern depend on a country that is predominantly has got higher males or has got higher females. For example, in the African countries, so in a lot of Asian countries, it shows that there are more men than women. China, India, the reason is because they prefer having women. So when they are pregnant, they go through a scanning system where they determine the sex and they have a voluntary abortion until they have a male child. So that is the reason why, yeah. Yes. That's what happens in a lot of Asian countries. If a woman is pregnant, they go to the hospital, maybe at 3 months or 2 months, where they able to determine the sex. When they find a new one case, they come and die vaccine, you just see. So that's what I'm saying. Oh, China. Yeah, China, India. Yes, even now. A lot of Asian countries, that's what they do. No, decision is between the family. Oh, yes. So it means good mind that no, it's the family that decides. So the decision is there because of preference. Also, when you are looking at the prestige of being respected in the household, it depends on having more male children as opposed to having female children. So I may know that as a and the other reason